We'll do it live, Hunter Camp. Oh, yeah! It's time for another episode of We Love Comics, the show where we love comics, and you should too. I am one of your hosts, Vactor, and I'm here with the two best comic friends a guy could ever have. Number one, we got Mr. Memphis himself, Marcus Seaberry. How you doing, Seaberry?
Hey man, you know what I'm saying?
Oh no.
No.
Oh no. Oh no. He's doing the Memphis voice.
Marcus Hustlin' Flow Seaberry is here again.
No.
One more again. And we've got Murfreesboro's own.
No. I live in
We've
Jackson,
got
Mississippi.
Jackson, Mississippi's own.
Which is like tiny Memphis.
Oh, well, we got it. We got Tiny Memphis in the house. Hunter Camp.
Big tiny Memphis hours.
Hunter Camp is a permanent giant-sized host. How about that?
Yeah.
Or We Love Comics, which is our topic shows. So, boys, I'm very glad you're here with me. But I want to tell everybody that they can always find us wherever all of your podcasts are found, or here on YouTube. If you're watching our lovely faces, you can leave a comment down below and tell us your comics origin story. But let's get right into it, boys. This episode, we're going to be giving all of our origin stories, how we got into comics, how we got into this lovely medium that we all love and crave, Hunter Camp.
Yeah. Oh.
And I want to start out with Mr. Marcus Seaberry, because he had the first origin story out of all of us. So, Seaberry,
yes, because
how did you get into comics?
I'm the old man. I'm 40 plus. All right, check it. Man, it feels like comics have kind of been there all my life. Because, you know, I came up in the era of like the 3-packs from Zare.
Ooh.
Zare was an old store chain. All right. You had a little random 3-packs. Like, I had a 3-pack of G.I. Joe issues. I believe Larry Hama wrote them.
Oh, nice.
I was a young man and I wasn't looking at credits. I tried to explain this to Larry Hama at Dragon Con 2016. I think I pissed him off. Because I was like, I believe I was reading your stuff, but I ain't know it. Then he made a face. I was like, hold up. I was 7. I didn't understand credits. I started reading the word balloons. I was like, okay, whoever them folks is. But G.I. Joe. Also another pivotal one, because, like, look, your boy loved Star Wars. Your boy really loved Return of the Jedi. I had a big storybook that had pretty much steals from the movie. But also, I think it must have been a 4-pack, because I had a 4-pack that had the comic book, I guess, miniseries version of Return of the Jedi published by Marvel.
Oh.
Had that joint. Loved it a lot. Read it a lot. Tore it up. And I'm mad because I looked, because while Googling for this, I saw how much one issue, like $325 now. So, ooh. Yeah, I failed. It's but
we all fail. It's fine. We all fail.
But so then also there was another, it might have been a DC 3-pack. It had an issue of World's Finest where Superman and Batman fought the Adored One. The Adored One was a sentient black cloud.
Oh, dang.
And like, this issue stuck with me because Superman's trying to find Batman. He was kidnapped by the Adored One. I'm talking, he frantically searching. This the old JLA, you know, satellite headquarters in the air, and he on all the computers. And the Flash say something sarcastic. He get pissed off, swing on the Flash. But of course, he the Flash. He don't hit him. But then Superman, being Superman, feel bad. Like, oh my God, Barry, if I can, he like trick on the Flash. I wasn't gonna connect, but if I was human, I'd be dead. So work on that. And like, that has shaped my view of Superman and Batman. Like, I like them as friends. That's how I knew them. This whole rivalry stuff kind of started with post crisis and burn and all that. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But also in that 3-pack, there was the DC Comics Presents where Superman teamed up with Green Arrow. And that messed me up too because Green Arrow on Super Friends was all swashbuckling
Oh yeah.
and like Errol Flynn adjacent. This was a straight like super liberal hippie Green Arrow. So that
Yeah.
like tripped me out. And then there was also in this 3-pack an issue of Detective Comics where Batman teams up with Ragman. And there's a point where each of them wears the other one's costume.
Hey.
Yeah, and then and I got that in second grade. And then in the summer between second and third grade, I was at a store in Somerville and I got another random 3-pack. This one had
Where were you getting all these 3-packs? Like I thought it was just the one store thing, but it's everywhere.
they there was the place where I mainly got them, but there were a lot of like little random 3-packs like in the 80s, man, like in little
Yeah.
stores. So this was like a little like I guess what would be a quickie mart today.
Oh,
So I got this 3-pack.
were they in spinner racks?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Oh,
it
we'll be talking about spinner racks.
it had
Yeah.
Star Wars Volume 1 number 73. This is my first like regular issue of the Star Wars comic. I ain't know where it fit in it because you know I'm buying 3-pack stuff outdated. You know I never read whole stories. But also in this 3-pack was Fantastic Four Volume 1 number 259. This is when they first come back from the negative zone doing John Burns' run,
Ah.
and their costumes changed. I think they were supposed to be
Hey.
black, but in my mind, I always thought they was navy blue with like the white
Right.
glove.
Yeah.
But and of course I tore up that issue too, and it's worth a lot, but it's
Hey.
fine. Yeah, man. So it was that stuff, and then I would just get and my first subscription came because I was I was getting the Superpowers toys, and they came with mini comics, and
Nice. Yeah, I remember that.
there was a subscription off on the back, and I was like, I think I'd seen the issue of Batman and the Outsiders on the newsstand at like a Kroger, and I was like, yeah, that name sound cool because I knew that was that movie called The Outsiders. I was like, yeah, I want to subscribe to Batman and the Outsiders. And that became the first comic I ever subscribed to. Also, the first time I saw the artwork of the amazing Alan Davis.
Ooh.
So, at this point, I'm finally, getting whole stories because I subscribe to the book. Let that
Mm.
subscription run out. My cousin Eugene kind of shamed me to give Marvel a try. So
Ooh.
I bought like some Web of Spider-Man issue where he fought some alien and an Amazing Spider-Man issue that was in the middle of this thing called Gang War, where Spider-Man thinks he's fighting the Kingpin, but it's Daredevil in a fat suit. And,
What?
and then the issue of Classic X-Men, which was a reprint book. And maybe like a year later, I was like, you know what? I want to start buying comics on a monthly basis. So,
Oh,
grade at
yeah.
11, I started. Remember, I bought an issue with Captain America. This is when he had given up the suit and he was dressed as the captain, the suit that the U.S. agent wears now.
Ah, yeah.
And this is also the issue where uh, Black Panther constructed him a vibranium shield, and he sent two of his operatives
Oh, snap.
to give it to Steve Rogers. It was also my first time seeing the Black Panther. Like, hey,
Nice.
that guy's cool. he looks cool. And my first regular issue of X-Men that I bought, it was called "'Twas the Night."
Ooh.
Um, Long Shot accidentally discovers the Reavers treasure trove. The Reavers were these evil cyborg dudes who would steal from folks and stuff. The X-Men beat them up, threw them out, and they took over this little Australian outback town that they were living in. The X-Men took it over because they were like, "This gonna be our base." Because the world thought they were dead because of Fall of the Mutants when Forge had kind of turned them into energy to destroy this otherworldly being called the Adversary. So, all right, Longshot
Ah.
following the treasure trove. Longshot's mutant power is psychometry, where if he touches an object, he will get the history of the object. So this overloaded him. He passed out. Then they decide, hey, we're gonna do the right thing and return all the treasures and artifacts to their descendants, and it's a Christmas issue. And and I think I bought like a issue of, was it Spectacular Spider-Man or something? Because it wasn't
Hmm.
until the next month that I that I got my first regular issue of Amazing, and I first saw Todd McFarlane's artwork.
Ooh
Yeah,
wee.
so that's the stuff like I remember, and I'm sorry, like I know it was a lot, but like I said, I've been pretty much reading all my life, and those were like the pivotal, formative ones that like shaped me.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Seaberry. And I, like I said in a previous episode, I think you are the only comics friend that I have that has been consecutively reading from that time until now. There was no breaks.
Since,
Like myself,
since '88, dude. Since
dang.
'88. Now there might have been a few months in between, like when I was in seventh grade. So my mom was like, "You can't buy no comics because you gotta save your money to buy people Christmas presents." But I think I was still subscribing to like X Factor back then. So
Hmm.
so like I I read Inferno from X Factor's point of view. Like that's all I had at
Wow.
first.
Yeah. But like I said, myself and Mr. Hunter Camp have been gone the last 5 years. We got
Yes,
snapped away by Thanos, but we're back.
it's true.
It's 5 years later, and we're back. Hunter Camp.
So this my story with comics is like nothing but like ups and downs and going away and coming back and doing all sorts of things, right? Um from back as far as I can remember, right? I've read comics in some way, you know. So when I was a kid, born in 1983, probably around when I was like 8 years old, I got like into comics. Now, um, the way that initially happened was two things, and it was specifically the Batman 1966 TV show.
Ooh wee.
Yes, so that was on reruns on like Fox Family and like those different types of like family channel type of deals. And then AMC, like we would get when we finally got cable, um I would, or like when we would randomly get cable, would show the 1966 Batman movie. And so we
Ah.
taped it, like you put it on like a VHS cassette, and I wore that thing out completely. And we even accidentally recorded the music video for the Adams Family Rap by MC Hammer in there. So there
Yeah.
was this one specific part where the like not Commissioner Gordon, but the like I for the life of me right now, I can't remember, but the police officer that's like the Irish police officer in the show, like list off the Joker, the Riddler too, Catwoman, and like list off all the people that have escaped, and then it goes directly into the Adams Family Rap, and so like
What?
yeah, so that's how it worked because we accidentally recorded over it. So that and the the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon show, right?
Yeah.
Those were the two things that brought me in. And the way they brought me in is I was familiar enough with Batman to where I started reading like random Batman comics. And the earliest thing that I remember, and you asked for the comic book covers that like were the ones that stuck out to us.
Yes.
So Batman 415 is the comic book, and it's that stuck in my head, right? So like when I think of Batman, I think of this specific comic book cover because I was in a jitney jungle in Jackson, Mississippi, and it's like actually the it's changed the name several times. But it's a grocery store here that's like a small like local neighborhood grocery store. And it's still the one that I go to now, but when I was a kid, they had a newsstand and spinner
Yeah,
racks, right?
they did.
So I'm
Because
from
I used to
yeah.
work at their
So
sister
I'm
store, Mega Market, in the summer of '94. That was my first job out of high
yeah,
school.
there you go. There you go. So they had these comics in there, and I'm familiar with Batman because of the show, and I'm familiar with Ninja Turtles because of that. So I start reading like the occasional comic book, and go every month and like pick up stuff. And if I was sick, my mom would like she would always call it, or my parents would always call it like get me a happy. Like so, if I was sick or didn't feel good or something like that, it would be like a small little present that would be either like an action figure or like a comic book. So those were like things that like we didn't necessarily buy a lot, but like on the odd occasion we would get this random thing. So after reading this stuff for a while, I see Batman number 415, which is like to me like one of the weirdest comic book covers because it's like Batman and Robin falling down in this like almost spirally white and pink lines, and it's just so strange to me. And it stuck in my mind, and I was just like, what is this? And then um later, and I think it was like right after this, like I went to go look for it or whatever, and I think I actually might have this one because the cover art just appealed to me so much that I just like when somebody says comic book cover, like this is the initial thing that I think of. It's like what got you into comics. This cover got me into comics. I don't remember the comic book. Like it's a Starlin book, so it's gonna be pretty good. It's a Starlin and a Aparo book, so it's probably good. But I've never gone back to read it or anything like that. But this, I may have bought it 75 cents at the time, so I hope so. But overall it was just really, it was so cool to me and was so hypnotizing, because I still don't understand what it is, but like yeah. But while that was going on around the same time, and this is I think late 80s, in Detective there was like a Scarecrow story going on. And again, I'm a little kid, like I'm not even 10 years old yet, like I'm like 8 or something.
Right.
And um I picked up and went to it. Like I didn't actually buy it, but I went and like I would read comic books in the store because also like, we're not necessarily buying a lot of stuff. So I read it, and it was a Scarecrow book in the 80s, and it terrified me. Like it absolutely like horrified me. I was so scared because Scarecrow at the time, like if you're familiar with Batman, like the way he was drawn, he was like really thin and like almost like a ghastly
Yeah,
type of face.
Ray Fox,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Looked real. Was that? I think
Yeah,
so. I think so. But it was during that era. Yeah, it was during that era, and he just was scary. And so I didn't understand. And then when I remember this conversation too. I talked to my dad. I'm like, why is this comic book so scary? And he was like, I think that like Batman is and so I've always understood this. Like Batman would be like the more like all ages comic, and Detective is the more like adult themed comic.
Hmm.
And so that's what made sense to me as a child. But that's how he explained it. My dad wasn't like a really big comic book reader, so I don't know how he would know this, but like I think he just assumed that.
Huh.
But I think he was right.
it was heavy
Um
because like the
th-
first issue of Detective I bought was in '89. Bray Fogle drew it. It was
yeah.
it was dealing with Jason Blood and the demon Etrigan.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, so I think he might have been right because I think Detective was more serious and like dark. But at the same time, the they also had all of the animated style TMNT comics. And so that was the one that I read like everything. And then it got to the point where I think the store stopped getting them, so I didn't know where else to go, right? Because like the only place I knew where to buy comics was the grocery store. Um, so from that point, we kind of like I got my dad to look into it because my dad, but like my parents were great. Like there's obviously like there's parental stuff, but
Hmm.
um, like they would do whatever to make sure that like we could find stuff, and they're like me in the fact that it's like if they don't know, they're gonna find out, right? So we found a comic book store like that was pretty much in our neighborhood. Like it was like not very far, but we didn't know what a comic book store was. But it's called the Star Store in Jackson, Mississippi. So this is like this became like not my home, but I went there as much as possible. So at that point, I found accidentally found because I was looking for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. Like I found the adult one, the one that was like the Daredevil style, right? So I found that TMNT, the black and white ones. Like I have issue 2 of that because I didn't know what I was reading. And so I just picked it up and I was like, oh. And it was also one of those ones that was really dark. So, like, this is kind of where I discovered that comic books could be dark also. And that actually
Ah.
kind of started to appeal to me. Um, Fast forward a little bit because this is around, I guess it was around 89. So the Batman movie came out. I did not see Batman 89 in theaters. My neighbors had HBO. We didn't because we didn't have the money for HBO. So they actually taped the Batman 89 when it came on HBO and they recorded it and brought it over and like showed it to us. And so this was like my first experience with like live action dark Batman. So from that point,
Mm.
I got really into like the Addams Family and the comic strips that were associated with Addams Family from like the 60s or whatever. Then Batman 80 or the Batman 1992, well, Batman Returns came out. Batman Returns really was the thing that kicked me into like general comics that wasn't Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Because I got, like Marcus was saying, for like Return of the Jedi, they had the comic adaptation of Batman Returns, and I read that thing 7 million times. So like if we went on a trip for my brother while he was in band, like I would be reading that. If we did anything, like I read that comic like 1,000 times because that was what I knew. So I read that so many times. So having gotten that from the Star Store, I actually went back to the Star Store repeatedly and discovered X-Men through the animated series and then going and finding it. And if I'm not mistaken, the thing that came out
Nice.
around the same time the X-Men animated series was going on was Generation X in 1994. So
Hey.
that was the other thing that got me too, because I mean, like, I was paying attention to like alternative music and like the terminology that was used. So Generation X was thrown around. There was a band called like Degeneration, and then like another band that was called like Generation X and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, these are punk bands. This is really cool. So I tied that together, and then like I read as much as possible of the tie-ins with Generation X. So it was really that reinvention of everything that was going on in 1994 with X-Men that got me reading like monthly. And then I found a comic book store, and then the comic book store closed and there was no more. And that was the first hiatus for me from comic books. Um, Fast forward, and that must have been, so I was 12 in 1994, so it probably would have been like 1995, 1996 when I stopped reading. So I was like 12 or 13 when I stopped reading, right? And then there was one day where I went to Books a Million in Jackson, Mississippi. It's still open, which is great. Actually, one of my friends is like one of the managers there now, which is funny. Um, but I
And this is
was,
what year?
this is, I'm getting there, but it's like around
Oh.
99. So a few years go by, I was probably around 18 or 17. I was walking in Books a Million, and by this point, like I had gotten super into like dark stuff, like scary stuff. I'd gotten super into Halloween, and just like horror movies and things like that. And I also like just generally liked Batman. Like I always loved Batman. So I was walking around Books a Million, and I went through and found like their comic book section, and I was like, huh, this is pretty cool. And this is the first trade paperback that I ever bought, first collected edition outside of Batman Returns. It was Batman the Long Halloween. So that was my
Oh yeah.
reintroduction. And so from that point, like that's when I was like, okay, what is a trade paperback? Like this is very cool. And so like got the occasional thing, found a couple of comic book stores, and then just kind of like dipped my toes back into it. But that was the big thing that was like, oh, this is huge, right? And so that was like 98.99. And then um went to like pick the occasional comic book up, nothing serious. And then fast forward a long time, I would go to the occasional comic book store. I would pick up like a random issue of like Batman or Detective or like X-Men or something, just like something random. But then um I started to make a lot of friends online through an application called Twitter. And two of the people that I made friends with are on this podcast right here. And some of the other ones are past that. So William Goodman, who I don't know if you brought up on this, but also he's very loud supporter of Jeff Johns and
Huh.
his Green Lantern run and what led into Blackest Night. So I was like, okay, well, this is a good starting point to kind of get into something. And I had been doing a podcast, and I was like, okay, well, it'd be funny if like I just went into this and acted like I didn't know who any of these people are, and did like a joke thing called Hunter Camp Reviews Comics. And it was like I didn't know what I was talking about. And so it was just funny to just get on there and just be like, well, I don't know who any of these people are. And like I read a little bit, but then that kind of one of the things that was going around the time Blackest Night was happening was Batman RAP. And that happened like right around that same time. It's written by Grant Morrison, and I discovered Grant Morrison, and then that changed my life and my
Yeah.
mind and the way I view artwork, the way I view storytelling, the way I view the world. So Grant Morrison's the kind of the end thing was Grant Morrison's Batman run. So like that whole run was the thing that got me straight back into reading every Batman book, reading other stuff, going into other things, finding writers and people that were kind of inspired by Grant Morrison's older work, and then going back and reading like new X-Men and then Animal Man and then The Invisibles and Doom Patrol, and then looking into Doom Patrol and then finding other issues of Doom Patrol and why Doom Patrol was so cool. And it's like the DC's version of X-Men, except for they're all weirdos. Like that was, and I was like, okay, well, this is what comics can be. Comics can be like, it can be scary, it can be weird, it can be a story about storytelling, like it can be about like theology, it can be about anything you want it to be. And it's not just something that can happen in superhero comics, like that can happen outside of it, because reading something like The Invisibles and realizing that that is a completely a different world. So you find indie stuff, you find Sandman. Like I'm finally going through and reading Sandman, but like all of that stuff really just changed my mind, and showed me the potential of what this can be and what kind of an art form this is. So like there have been like several times where I've gone and read stories and gone and read like a run of a character or a team or anything like that. But when I got to Grant Morrison and his story with Batman and kind of the love letter to Batman's history
Yeah.
and all of the
Yeah.
weirder parts of Batman, like that's really what did it for me. And now like and so like I haven't been reading weekly in a really long time, and that's why I'm not on the pull list episodes. But like even during that break, I was still reading like trades and random stuff like Southern Bastards and um not Chew, but like the Rob Gilroy, like his side stuff, like
Oh,
his
okay.
weirder stuff that was
Right.
cool. But yeah, like all of that other stuff, man. Like that's where I've been. So
Okay.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
more,
So
it's really Morrison.
yeah, I was gonna say it started with Batman, and then also Batman pulled you back in,
Yeah,
and
each time
now
each time it's been Batman.
even with the Batman, which came out
Yes.
earlier this year, another Bat thing that kind of pulled Hunter Camp back in. Well,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah.
Marcus.
Cause you was listing stores. I'm like, man, I'm gonna go and keep it a buck. Like I say, I was getting joints as there, but also there was a Super D in Collierville. At a
Hmm.
Walgreens.
Yeah, Super D. Yeah, yeah, it's like Eckerd's and
Yeah.
Super D. Yeah. Super D got like you get random stuff there too.
Walmart was doing three
Oh,
packs in the
nice.
early 90s, but I ain't really fool with them. But now Kroger, the Kroger in Collierville in like 92, 93, they made like a nice little comic section. They weren't spinner racks, they were like the stable rack. And you like, ah. And I was like,
Yeah,
so I got those. And of course, now the first comic book store I ever went to it was one of the Memphis Comics and Records. I believe it was the one on Highland. Because back in the day, they had about three or four. And they all went away, and they just had the one on Highland, and now that one is gone too. But of course, now
yeah.
my LCS now is Comics and Collectibles in Memphis.
Which is a great store.
Yeah, shout
Whenever I go to
out to
Memphis, I try to
my
go there.
departed college roommate David Harrison. Cause he put me on. I remember in the fall of like '96, he was like, "Man, let me show you this store." And I was just like, "Oh my god, this store is so great!" But I couldn't really buy a lot of stuff because I was broke. Cause I went to summer school that summer. I didn't work.
And that that store is
Oh
the
yeah,
reason we know
that's
each other,
like
Seaberry,
Hmm.
because
you
we
and
met in
you and
comics and
Willie and I
collectibles.
think Chris were doing Geekland.
Yes, my former comic book podcast. And the way that I found them was I had just moved from Arizona. I had Atomic Comics in Arizona, which was my favorite shop. And I moved to Memphis and I said, okay, I got to find that was one of the first things I did. Let me look up
Hmm.
on the internet what's the local comic book shop. And it was Comics and Collectibles. And there was another one, which now I don't even remember the name of it because I went to it, I saw it, and I was like, all right, I'm not going back here. When I went to Comics and Collectibles, as soon as I stepped in the door, I was like, this is my type of comic book shop. So yeah, huge amount of memories for me with Comics and Collectibles. Um, so I guess we can get to my origin story now.
But yeah,
I My earliest memory of comic books is Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7. That one is that one is the one where Superman is holding Supergirl
yeah.
and she had died.
So what's interesting about that is like the stuff that Morrison did made me go back and read like
Yeah.
Crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and at the time, I didn't know it was part of a crossover. I had no idea. I was just like, "Oh, that's Superman," because I that was my first physical comic book. But my dad had introduced me to comics before that. He was a comic reader when he was growing up, so I was always around Superman, always around Batman and the Flash. Those are my dad's favorites, and Spider Man. So my dad took me to we were on a military base in Japan, and it was the what would we the quickie mart of that military installation was the little they call it the shopette, and that's where they had food, conveniences, and all this stuff. But they had spinner racks, and so Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, which I wish I had kept it. I got it, but no idea what happened to that issue. But the thing that stood out to me was that Superman was crying, and I said, as a 7 year old, what would make Superman cry? Like to me, that was mind blowing that something could make Superman cry. So that was a huge issue for me. I remember looking at the cover like over and over again. The other one was The Adventures of Superman number 463. This was the first post crisis race between the Flash and Superman. And so on the cover it says, "Who really is the fastest man alive, the Man of Steel or the Flash?" And I was Superman through and through at that time. But now going back and it's funny because there's been so many races between them, but this was the one that will always stand out to me because of the artwork. It was actually written and drawn by Dan Jurgens, and this was the Wally West Flash. Like I didn't know this was a different Flash than the Barry Allen Flash because another big thing for me was the superpowers figures, and like Seaberry said, the ones
Yeah.
that came with the little comic book, those were also a huge influence on me. Reading the characters' origin stories in those little comic books was a huge thing for me. So I was like, I had pretty much all of them at the time, and those actually I was looking at them just now when I was doing some research for this episode, and I was like, oh, they've re-released
Yeah,
these.
and
Maybe
some
I
of
should
them are
try to
like
get
Yeah.
some of these, scoop these up.
Yeah, man. They're good like reproductions of them. Real,
Yeah, I
real
need to
good.
look for that.
I
But do
don't
they
know.
come with the comics or no?
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything about that. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But like I
I'm
didn't grow up with
jealous
those. So I don't
because
really
I
have a
only
reference
got
point.
3 superpowers figures in my life. I had the Flash, Green Lantern, and Aquaman.
Nice. Yeah, the ones that stand out to me was Superman because I remember his cape came off, Batman because his cape came off,
Uh-huh.
Flash. I actually had Doctor Fate, Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Lex Luthor, Firestorm, and those were the ones that like those images of them, those costumes were the ones that were cemented in my mind for years because of that.
I got a question for you, okay?
Yes.
Because like I don't remember the superhero like the superpowers figures, but you mentioned a couple: the Batman with the cape that comes off, and Firestorm. Was the Batman with like was that one
Yeah.
blue? Was it gray and
Yes, it
blue?
was the gray and blue cape
I may have
costume.
actually had those, like because I remember
Ooh.
I had a Firestorm figure, and like I didn't know who the hell that was. You know,
Me
like
neither. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I
I
see,
was
didn't know
just
who Dr. Fate was. I didn't know who Firestorm was.
yeah, but I don't even think I had the boxes. Like I don't think I ever opened them. I
well,
think that they were
I
just
knew
like
who
loose.
Firestone was around that time because
He
well,
deserves it, not
well,
us.
well, now because like there was a version of Super Friends that was called Super Friends: The Legendary Superpower Show, and they introduced Firestorm on that show. He becomes like
Oh, okay.
a young member of the Super Friends. And then the next season, which was the last season, the title of the show becomes Superpowers Galactic Guardians, and they introduce Cyborg.
That's crazy. That's a crazy name
What?
for a show.
Dang. I'm looking at these now. They're going for like 700 on
Dude,
eBay,
I
Seaberry.
He's
gonna be
about to
seeing
get mad.
all
Like I
episodes.
know.
I'm thinking
I know.
about,
Like, what are you gonna
huh?
do? What are you gonna be do?
Yeah, you're right.
What
I
are you
was
gonna do?
young. I actually played with my toys and read my comics. It was wrong.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But those comics were so important to me because in they shaped my what I thought was the origin of these characters. I was like, these never change. They're always the same origins. They're always the same people. So
Ah.
for me, those figures were huge.
I had that Batmobile.
Ooh. Okay.
That yeah, I had that Batmobile. And I think I had the Robin. You know what? I may not
Look
have
at
had the
you.
Batman, but I had the Robin.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was always more of a figure than vehicle guy. I would get like secondhand vehicle. Well, no, my mom
Well, it
bought
might have
me
been
the
secondhand.
GI
I don't
Joe
know.
motorcycle, and she bought me the Fang helicopter. It was
Nice. And
So
I was gonna say I was also big into Ninja Turtles, just like you guys,
yeah.
GI Joe, just like you guys, He Man. So it was a lot of those cartoons that had tie-ins with action
Mm-hmm.
figures. Those were big for me. They weren't, I wasn't reading the comics of those,
Yeah.
but they were
you see,
influencing
but I
me
was
growing up.
11
So this is like $700.
by the time the Ninja Turtles miniseries dropped, so I never
Oh
owned
dang!
any.
I
Yeah.
had I had the van.
Oh yeah, yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
and all the
I
parts
remember
fell off.
I remember my neighbor had the van, but I was like, oh man, he must be
My
rich. He
cousin
can
had
afford the
metal.
van,
Dude,
the
and
turtle
like
The
van.
robot.
when I go back and know how much like this type of stuff costs,
Oh
like
yeah.
my parents like must have done a lot because we did not have a lot of money.
I said my cousin had
Seaberry, what you say?
Metalhead, the robot turtle.
Oh
That's
yeah, yes, I had that
something
too.
that he
Yeah, yeah.
had.
Turtles
Cause
were big
like
for me. Like,
now I was watching a cartoon
I know it.
and my mom took me to see the first movie theatrically. That was when I was in 8th grade.
mhm. Oh, nice,
You know,
nice. I saw the second one
oh, she took
theatrically,
me to see the second one theatrically.
which I didn't know came out the next year. I was just watching a recap on YouTube, and they're like, "Yeah, it came out the next year." They forced it into theaters, like they rushed it into production. But to me as a kid, I was like, oh, this is great. Secret of the
Of course.
Ooze, Vanilla Ice.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those movies were great.
So those are, like I said, a lot of. I had a huge DC influence when I was a kid, but also Spider Man was always in the background. I don't remember what the first Spider Man thing was. Maybe it was the
Yeah.
Electric Company when Spider Man was running around, and the '80s Spider Man cartoon, Spider Man His Amazing Friends, and then the
Yeah.
'60s cartoon in reruns. I would watch. So those were also influencing me at that time. I never had this one because it came out in August of 1966, but a hugely influential cover for me was Amazing Spider-Man number 39. That's the one where Green Goblin is holding him and he's got his mask off and he's flying him on the Goblin glider and half of his costume is sticking out and he's in his street clothes. But I was like, he's gonna be they're gonna find out who Peter Parker is. He's gonna his secret identity. So I was like going crazy as a kid.
He's
So
gonna
that
have to
one
erase everybody's memory.
that would come later, Hunter Camp. But that was a huge one for me. The Amazing Spider-Man number 39, and then the very first issue. I had to look this up because at the time I didn't know what number these were and what series they were. Amazing Spider-Man number 261 from February of 1985. So I was 3 years old when this came out. Well, my dad bought it for me, but it was in German. So that was what I remembered about it because
It's
my
pretty
dad was in the
cool.
Air Force. So we were always in a different country. I wish I had kept that
Yeah,
issue.
that one I would love to have kept if I were you.
Um, that one, it has the Hobgoblin on the cover and he's holding Spider Man. Like, looks like he just beat him and he's holding him. So I was like, what? How did he get beaten? So all these books, like the covers, were great at telling the story and
Yeah.
capturing your interest. So those were all of my original comics origin stories. Like I said, I was like around 7 or 8 at the time, and then I just kind of gradually fell out of it. I started getting into basketball, girls, things like that. Um, and then what brought me back into comics was a trifecta of things. Number one was the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie.
Mm,
Number two, Ultimate Spider-Man
Mhm.
by Brian Michael Bendis. And then number three, podcast. And in
yeah.
particular, so when podcasting came out in 2005, when it became available in iTunes, because it was around before that, but once it became available in iTunes, it was easy to get it on your iPod, and you could listen to podcasts. So I was like, oh, well, what am I interested in? All right, there's comedy, sports, movies, television. Oh, I'm getting back into comic books. Let me look up comic book podcasts, and I found Comic Geek Speak. And the way that their show was is even to this day, I'm still trying to model our show around that. And they're still doing it. It's not like they went away, but it's not the original host like it was when I was listening to it. It's a group of guys who feel like they're in a comic book shop and they're just talking to each other about the comics that are coming out. They talk about previews, talk about movies, and that was the feel that I always loved because they knew about all these comics that I wasn't reading. I didn't have the knowledge of, and they were giving me that knowledge. So I was soaking it up and like, oh, this book is good. This book is good. Like I would write down, oh, which books are good, go to my local library, check them out, read them, and then listen to the episodes that they talked about those books. So that was a hugely influential thing for me. And they were nice enough to record a bumper for us when we had the Geekland podcast in Memphis. They recorded they did this Elvis impersonation. They're like, I'm going to Geekland. So I was hugely thankful to those guys. But that was something that I could listen to and learn about comics, listen to other guys geeking out about comics, and I felt a sense of community because I didn't know anyone. I was in Arizona at that time, and I didn't know anyone who also liked comic books. So listening to these other guys that had this wealth of knowledge and they were kind of just sharing their love of comics in this medium, and that's when I started to branch out, kind of like Hunter. Long Halloween, Dark Knight Returns, went through all the classics as well as the current books. Now, this was around the time of um, what was the Crisis before 52? Do you
Yeah.
guys know? It was like
Is it
Infinite
Infinite?
Crisis. Yeah,
There
Infinite
was
Crisis.
Identity and Infinite that happened, I think,
Yeah,
prior.
Identity Crisis was great. That was
Yeah.
one I read too. But it was Infinite Crisis. This was around that time,
Mm-hmm.
just to show you where I was. So, Ultimate Spider-Man, like retelling Spider-Man in the 2000s, that just made me, fall in love with Brian Michael Bendis, fall in love with Mark Bagley, which I forgot Mark Bagley was doing art when I was reading before Amazing Spider-Man, and I had a subscription. Seaberry, the only subscription I had was Amazing Spider-Man, so it would come in the mail. I remember Amazing Spider-Man 400 being wrinkled up and bent up in my mailbox, which I don't know. I think I sold that one, but
Yeah.
um, those all of those things were hugely influential on me and getting me back into comics. And now we're doing it all over again, Hunter
I
Camp. We're
I gotta
back.
give it up one more because like we didn't say this and none of us mentioned it, but X2, the X-Men movie,
Yeah.
but X2
Oh
specifically
well, no.
like kicked me back in
Mm.
because it brought up all the characters from from when I was a kid, and
Oh,
it because like
and we
you
were
had
all
Nightcrawler too, because
yeah.
like Nightcrawler wasn't in the first one, so it was like that further exploration of like the further out characters, like that was what there was a
Yeah.
hint of Jubilee, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, I love Jubilee. So yeah, like those
I was
types of
still
things were
reading, but I
those
did
characters
love
were
that
being in
movie though.
X2. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of X-Men 1 at the time. So when X-Men 2 came out, I was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, go ahead.
okay.
Go
I was going to
okay.
say I liked Blade, but I didn't associate it with Marvel or with
Yeah.
comic books. So yeah, X-Men 1 for me was the one that I was like, "Yes."
The
But that didn't get me reading comics. Like I said,
yeah,
the
X
Spider-Man was one that got me to
right.
read comics.
Right. Yeah, X-Men 2, like the reason that did it for me was because like like I was saying, like you started to deal with like more characters.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
and they're like in the first one you kind of got the ones you would expect. Right? But yeah, with 2 it was just like just nonstop awesome.
Yeah.
Because that
Yep.
was the thing too. It was like I always want to see like I want to see characters that I wouldn't necessarily expect to see.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Spider-Man, we saw Spider-Man. That's obvious. That feels obvious. Batman feels obvious.
I
Superman. Um, but when you got to X-Men, you expect to see Wolverine and Cyclops and Jean Grey and all them on Storm. But then when it went further in, it's like that's where it
I
blew
was
up.
just
And I'm like,
glad to
yeah,
see movies, particular Marvel movies, getting wide releases and making a profit. Because I was
yeah.
the guy reading
Oh
comic
yeah.
scene back in the day, and they're gonna make this and they're gonna make that, and then like, well,
Wizard.
comic scene predates Wizard, but yeah, I was reading some Wizard too. Uh, and like
Yeah,
I
Wizard got
remember,
like
like
yeah,
I remember them talking about the Harvey Korman directed Fantastic Four, but I never saw it. Yeah.
which
Oh,
is a masterpiece.
I mean,
I love it.
it's bad, but it's
I
charming.
love it. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
It's like one of the worst
and
movies, but it's
like
great.
then I think my mama rented me that horrible Captain America with,
Ooh.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was just
I
like,
have that on
I would
DVD,
always
I
see
think.
these, and I'd just be like, but I accepted them because that's all we had. Like when the Hulk
Yeah.
came back with Thor, and they brought the Incredible Hulk back with Daredevil, and I was like, yeah, yeah. I mean, Daredevil's costume looks weird, but hey, it's Daredevil. And play Street Hawk to play Daredevil. I was like, I'm with it. But like Blade kind of
It,
carries weight with me because I was like, oh, so a Marvel movie is straight up coming to the movie theater. Like it's really coming this time. And oh, then I was like, oh yeah, I liked it. Then I was like, because I think Blade had been in the Midnight Suns books. I didn't read them, but I was always reading bullpen bulletins and comic shop news, so I was aware of them. And then it was like, oh, like I said, a Marvel movie coming to the movie theater. Oh, it's good. Oh, other folks think it's good. I was like, oh crap. Then of course X-Men. I didn't love the first X-Men, but I was glad it existed. But then X2 came and that freaking opening sequence with Nightcrawler. So
Oh,
yeah,
so
so like
good.
that's where I was, man. I was just glad to, I guess, see Marvel's glow up, if you will.
Nice. Yeah, that was something that was huge for me too. When comic book movies started to be taken more seriously and started to get love at the box office, I was buying tickets for Spider Man and going and seeing other movies, Hunter Camp. I was not seeing Spider Man, but I
Yeah,
wanted them to benefit from the box office. So
right.
that was where my head was at. So
The
when the Tobey Maguires were coming out, I was huge into
yeah.
those.
The funny thing is, I did the opposite with the Wolverine movie. Like, I didn't pay for that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So those were our comics origin stories, my friends. Like I said, feel free to let us know yours if you want to leave a comment down below here on the YouTube channel and subscribe to us wherever your podcasts are found. Hunter Camp,
That's me.
where can they find you streaming?
You can find me in a lot of different places. You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/HunterCamp, Instagram at I am Hunter Camp. And I just love that name, I am Hunter Camp, so much that I use it on Twitch, where you can go to twitch.tv/I am Hunter Camp and follow me. I'm ultimately trying to get to 100.
Yeah.
And if I do, so like I can monetize if people watch it normally, like regularly. But if I get to 100, I'm gonna dress up as an assassin from Assassin's Creed and play Assassin's Creed all day and just let people make fun of me the whole time.
Oh, yeah. You
So that's the
heard it here
plan,
first.
and that's for followers, so it doesn't even have to be subscriptions or anything like that.
Follow Hunter Camp
Yeah.
on Twitch.
All right.
Mr. Marcus Seaberry,
Yes,
where can they
you can
find you
find me
reviewing
on
movies?
CineSundry. That is a show I do in conjunction with On Location Memphis. It's a
You just dropped
Yes,
your Doctor
Doctor Strange
Strange
and the
review.
Multiverse of
Oh,
Madness dropped recently. Um, you can find it on the On Location Memphis Facebook page and on the On Location Memphis YouTube channel. Just they're an organization about music and movies and bringing events. We try to bring a little culture to the M Town. Check me out there. Um, huh?
Nice.
you'll have a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely,
There's a
definitely.
lot of culture in
Um,
Memphis.
and then I be acting and stuff. So Orange Mound Bound is an animated project that I'm a part of. I'm the dad of one of the main characters. We are crowdfunding.
Nice.
That sounds so
Yeah,
good.
trying
Sounds
to
so
trying to
perfect.
finish that and bring that to you. So that's where I am.
Don't forget, I am part of a Geek So to Speak podcast network where you can find all of the shows at geeksotospeak.com/network. You can find our Star Trek show, TREKnological. You can find our video game show, Sandbox Gamers, or this show right here. We love comics. And Hunter Camp, you have some?
Yeah, Sandbox. I'm a video game person, and Sandbox Gamers is fantastic. Like,
Thank
it's
you.
really good. It's really good.
So you can find all those wherever your podcasts are found, or like I said, geeksotospeak.com/network. And we have one final thing to say to the audience out there. We love comics.
And you
And you should too.
Yeah!